Good morning and welcome. First, we're going to have Maureen Malua come up and speak.
Hi, I was asked to speak about the timeline, and women's suffrage goes back a long way. 1848, Seneca Falls, suffragists got together and wanted to have women have the vote, same as men. But the amendment that gave us the right to vote was first passed in the House and in the Senate, and then the first state to ratify it was Illinois on June the 10th. Pennsylvania, I'm happy to say, was early to it. We were number 7 on June the 24th, and the very last one that lagged behind was Tennessee on August the 18th of 1920, over a year after Pennsylvania stepped up and voted for women to have the right to vote. And the right to vote here in Pennsylvania was not done by party line. When you look at the old newspapers, there were divisions in both political parties. So it wasn't one party over another, but it was enough people coming together and saying, yes, this is the right thing to do. So make sure that you vote each and every time. You know, that's your right and that's your duty as a citizen. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're going to have Ann Mason, biographer Ann Mason, come up and speak.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm talking about Daisy Lampkin, and everybody knew who she was 50 or 60 years ago. It seems that people in Pittsburgh don't know who she is anymore. Born in 1883 in Washington, D.C., Daisy Elizabeth Adams and her mother, Rosa Proctor Adams, moved to Reading, PA, with her stepfather, John Temple. After she graduated from public high school around 1900, she moved to Pittsburgh in 1909. Marrying William Lampkin in 1912, she started right where she was as a housewife living in the Hill, hosting teas. So she was reputed to hold her first women's tea in 1912. This was her original mode of advocacy for women's suffrage, the right to vote. She joined women's clubs to advocate for women and women's rights. She recognized that the right to vote was the greatest need and the most important tool for women to gain a voice and power. Thus, she became a suffragette or suffragist and was elected president in 1915 of what was then the Negro Women's Equal Franchise League. She remained president of what then became the Lucy Stone League until her death in 1965. She worked with Mary McLeod Bethune and Mary Church Terrell. Lampkin was one of the founders of the National Council of Negro Women, still, as we know, a powerful and active women's organization today, even in this area. She was also involved in the founding of the National Association of Colored Women, now the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs. In 1916, she attended their national conference in Baltimore as a representative of the Lucy Stone League. There she started to realize her own voice and her own power as an advocate for women. And after that, she enlarged her perspective to become an advocate for Negroes, colored, black people, primarily through the NAACP. In the 1930s and 40s, she was known as Mrs. NAACP. After the 19th Amendment was passed, giving women the right to vote, as you know, in 1920, by enough states, she turned her many talents to work for black people on the national scale. Thank you.
And now we'll have the mayor come up and present today's proclamation.
Thank you, Clark, and thank you to everyone that's in this room. On behalf of the people of the city of Pittsburgh, thank you for recognizing that the struggle continues. That although women fought and were successful in getting the right to vote, that doesn't mean that equity exists in this city, in this state, or in this country. And the work that they did were trailblazers. I mean, the work that they did was built on a foundation of 143 years of time prior, from the time that the Declaration of Independence was written, when Abigail Adams spoke out to her husband about the necessity of including women. And for 143 years, people pushed until that right was given to them. And as we stand here today and we look at the work that we're doing locally, we finally, after 202 years in the city of Pittsburgh, have a commission that is based on gender, and a gender equity commission that works through what our country still hasn't accepted as international law, but our city does recognize. The proclamation I'm going to read is a wonderful history of those leaders of the past, but it's important to continually find the leaders of tomorrow. I want to thank, in particular, Gloria Feruzin, who has taken this issue on as a special initiative of the mayor's office, has incorporated that history which so many people have forgotten, has found the women throughout Pittsburgh's history whose names have been forgotten, but were absolutely instrumental in building the city that we know today, and to recognize the work that all city workers do in being able to build a more equitable city. Whereas on June 24th, 1919, Pennsylvania became the 7th state to ratify the 19th Amendment, which granted women the right to vote. Pittsburgh's legion of fierce, tireless women used their creativity, intelligence, and networks to play a pivotal role in reaching ratification. And whereas for years prior to the ratification, Pittsburgh women led the way, creating innovative methods to broadcast their message. Jenny Rosing devised a strategy known as the Pittsburgh Plan to win legislators' support. It was used throughout Pennsylvania and beyond our borders. In 1915, Rosing drove a truck with a 2,000-pound justice bell to every county in Pennsylvania, making countless campaign stops in cities, villages, and farm fields. And whereas African American women, including the Ritz sisters, opened their homes for organizing meetings, held presentations in neighborhood churches, and outgoing suffragists like Daisy Lampkin and Grace Lowndes energized their communities with stirring speeches delivered in churches and on street corners. And whereas prominent Jewish women of the era, including Bertha Raw and Gertrude Sunstein, also took up the suffragist cause, as did members of the city's LGBT community, like Edna Scheuer, who ensured that public events were well organized and advertised. Whereas the women crafted ingenious fundraising efforts, including Mrs. L.O. Kleber's tongue-in-cheek compilation, The Suffragette Cookbook, in Winfred Meeks Morris' unusually egalitarian party, The Shirtwaist Ball, that welcomed guests ranging from factory workers to Gilded Age debutantes. And whereas, with limitless energy and focus, the Kennedy sisters, Eliza and Lucy, marshaled space in the Jenkins Arcade to announce scores during the 1915 World Series, while cleverly inserting pro-suffragette messages in between updates. They also helped to organize Pittsburgh's 1914 suffrage parade, which was likely the area's only integrated parade in the nation. And whereas, despite the scarcity of financial resources and the rudimentary forms of mass communication, Pittsburgh women from every corner of our city lit the fire for suffrage and grew its spark across Pennsylvania. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, William Peduto, Mayor of the City of Pittsburgh, do hereby declare June 24th, 2019, the centennial of Pennsylvania's ratification of the 19th Amendment here in our most livable city of Pittsburgh. Gloria, can you come up to accept this?
I certainly can. Thank you, Mayor, for reading it so beautifully.
Thank you for being the heart and the spirit of those women whose names we should never forget.
Never. Yeah.
And those that the future that you have been a trailblazer, the time that I've gotten to know you, which is about half of our lifetimes, and continuing to be so for so
Okay.
many women.
Thank you.
You want to
Thank
say a
you.
couple words?
About these women, as you know, some of them are our great-grandmothers, and they left us little trails of breadcrumbs. There's hints everywhere. When you find them, follow them, track them down, say their names, say them again and again and again. And I'm going to be moved to tears, but they left us shoulders to stand on. So let's not keep going backwards. Let's go up, up, up. That's all.